Call to order a public hearing pertaining to the proposed Community Development Block Grant 2016-2017 Annual Action Plan. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Preston is not here. Mr. McBride.
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz. Here. Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Ms. Gaines.
Here.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak pertaining to a proposed Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan? Yes, sir. Please come forward, and if you would state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Mark Tertulli. I'm at 1212 Timber Ridge Court. I want to speak specifically to the home buyer grant plan that you have in there. I just want to applaud the council for supporting that. We had an option to utilize one of those a couple of years ago when we purchased here in Normal. We declined in favor of people who we felt might benefit more, but I think it's a great program. I'm pleased to see that it's continuing to be funded. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak pertaining to proposed Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan? And third and final time, is there anyone here wishing to speak to the proposed Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan?
Move adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen.
Aye.
Mr. McBride.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz. Aye. Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Gaines.
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. The public hearing is closed. Call to order a public hearing on the proposed annual budget for the town of Normal for fiscal year 2016-2017. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos.
Here.
Mr. Fritzen.
Here.
Mr. Preston is not here. Mr. McBride.
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz. Here. Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Ms. Gaines.
Here.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on the proposed annual budget for the town of Normal for the fiscal year 2016-2017? Yes, sir. We've already got your name and address.
Thank you. I wanted to speak on a couple of items. First of all, the 1% sales tax increase. I was a little disappointed in the handling with that. It was passed for one purpose, which no longer exists. My preference would have been I'd like to see that money returned to the community. As yet, we don't have a plan to spend it, other than the $1.5 million for mental health facilities and initiatives, which sounds great, but it's more than we spend on most of the years for roads around here. So since we have a bond passed with extra money available, I would rather see that money for mental health initiatives come out of the bond and return the sales tax to the community. If not, then I would encourage the council to please invest in the surrounding infrastructure of the community. We've got problems with the original construction on College Avenue, on Fort Jesse. The roads are like washboards. They are getting severely potholed. I know there are some improved budget forecasts for roads in the future. I just worry about the total amount of bond load that we have running up against the 10% operational budget load to finance that. We're going to have some major road expenditures in the future. So if we're going to hang on to that tax increase, then I'd like to see it devoted towards those resources. The other area I wanted to address was the overpass on the railroad tracks. I've seen the plan for the proposed underpass. I think the vision looks great. I just know that it's going to take about 4 to 5 years minimum to see something like that realized. My encouragement to the council would be to go ahead with the overpass for now, because it could be executed in 18 months. The funds are available as a grant, of all things. There is a definite need for better crossing. I'm sure you would acknowledge that. Longtime residents here are aware of the many deaths we've had at those tracks. Would love to see an improved way of getting from the north side to the south side. Down the road then, that still doesn't preclude the underpass plan in the future. There's time then to develop it, to find the financing available for it, and when the time comes, replace the overpass with the underpass and the grounds that are envisioned. I think that'd be wonderful, but I'd hate to see us miss this opportunity on the overpass. And those are, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak pertaining to the proposed annual budget for the town of Normal for fiscal year 2016-2017? And third and final time, is there anyone here wishing to speak on the proposed annual budget for the town of Normal for fiscal year 2016-2017? Motion for adjournment?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McBride.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz. Aye. Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Gaines.
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. That public hearing is adjourned. Call to order a regular meeting for the Normal Town Council for March 7th, 2016. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus?
Here?
Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. Preston is not here. Mr. McBride?
Aye. Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
I'm confused. Here.
Ms. Gaines?
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, I certainly hope the roll call isn't indicative of the kind of meeting we're going to have tonight. We're going to begin with the omnibus agenda. These are items that are considered routine in nature and will be handled with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion, and I would like to be excused on voting on any bills I may have incurred in my duties as mayor. Mr. Fritzen?
Items J and K, please.
I'd like to
Ms.
pull
Lawrence?
item I.
All in a row here.
Yeah, I, Jane.
Aye.
Items we're considering in the omnibus agenda tonight are approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 15th, 2016, and approval of town of normal expenditures for payment as of March 2nd, 2016. We have a resolution to award the bid for water main and service line materials to Water Products Company in Bloomington, Illinois. A resolution waiving the formal bid process and authorizing the purchase of a utility van for the Fire Department Prevention District in the amount of $22,978 from Dennison Ford. A resolution waiving the formal bid process and authorizing the purchase of a 2016 ambulance from the Alexis Fire Equipment at a cost of $207,953. A resolution authorizing the execution of a 3-year contract with Mad Bomber Fireworks Production of Kingsbury, Indiana for the annual 4th of July display. A resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with McLean County for animal shelter services. A resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with McLean County for animal warden services. We have a resolution to award the bid for replacement of the water treatment plant standby generator to Wilcox Electric and Service at a total cost of $329,350. A resolution approving a 3-year engineering continuing service agreements with hourly rates and direct costs for 2016 with Clark Dietz Incorporated, Crawford Murphy and Tilley Incorporated, Farnsworth Group, Lewis Yaki and Brown Incorporated, Maurer Stutz Incorporated, and White and Company to provide engineering services for various town departments. We have a resolution conditionally reapproving a final plat for the 9th addition to the Vineyard subdivision, and an ordinance approving an amended special permit for a telecommunications tower at 1324 Fort Jesse Road. Please call the roll.
Move approval.
Oh, we need an approval, thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. With the exception of 3 items, the omnibus vote or agenda is approved. Item I is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Alert and Associates to conduct a network security audit. Ms. Lorenz?
I'd like to move for this resolution to be approved
Thank you.
for the
Second.
network security.
Ms. Lorenz, it's all yours.
All right. Really just a compliment that I want to draw attention to for this endeavor to conduct a network security audit. I appreciate the staff's intentional and very deliberate and thorough review of what they're looking for in this security audit, and some information that I've been reading, most recently in a publication that I get here from the Illinois Municipal Review that talks about this very issue being important. So I want to commend and applaud the staff for taking this issue up.
Thank you. Further on the item? Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The item is approved. Item J is a resolution waiving the formal bidding process and authorizing an agreement with WSP Parsons Brinkerhoff for the preparation of a fiscal year 2016 transportation investment generating economic recovery, better known as TIGER, discretionary grant application for the Uptown Normal Rail Grade Separation Project and approving an associated budget adjustment.
Move approval.
Thank you. Mr. Fritzen?
Yeah, the reason I pulled this is I think that it's clear that the public, for various reasons, I think, is still having trouble grasping exactly what is happening here or what might happen. And so I just felt like it was probably a good idea to talk through that a little bit. And, you know, with the TIGER grant, the complexities of that, I agree that we need to, you know, bring in somebody, and these people have a proven track record even with us, you know, so I think it's the right move there. But the pedestrian overpass that, you know, we had the grant for to construct was primarily, I mean, not that it couldn't be used for other purposes, but it's primarily to move rail passengers from the north side of the tracks to the south side of the tracks so that south platform could be used if there are 2 trains in the station at any given time. Obviously, if it's there, somebody wanting to cross the tracks that way could use it for that, but it was not intended for or meant for a significant amount of pedestrian traffic. At our latest understanding, we can probably have an at-grade crossing for a period of time that was going to buy us some time to do some engineering studies and get some better cost estimates on alternatives. But that at-grade crossing also will only be for rail passengers, as I understand it. And it will be a controlled crossing. So it's not intended for use by the general public, for traffic coming off the Constitution Trail. That traffic will still route over to Linden Street and loop around behind the Discovery Museum. So I think it's important to differentiate there for the public, because, you know, as I talk to people, I see they aren't grasping the difference there that uses with the, you know, the underpass overpass question, that being an overpass, it's more of a bridge as a alternative. We've expressed a preference for the underpass, but, you know, there still is a possibility, I suppose, we could end up with a bridge, and those would be available to the general public, general pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, and the like. You know, those would be meant to accommodate that traffic. So, you know, a big difference there between what we were obligated by contract to provide, which is that initial overpass, the at-grade crossing, and then the future underpass or bridge that would open up Uptown 2.0 for us. And so I don't know if Mr. Peterson, if you have anything to add to that, but I just felt like, you know, we really need to delineate those things for people, because I think there has been a lack of understanding in the general public and
Mark, let me.
about those things.
Just a little background, and I'm sure Mark will have more to fill in on this, but I think it's appropriate to talk about our process here a little bit too, what we're doing and why we're doing it. We will be undertaking a feasibility study for this project. That's required by the federal government for these projects, that there's federal dollars involved. And that project will look at both an underpass and an overpass. Our public meetings, people have told us they prefer an underpass, but a feasibility study is going to give us a lot better picture on what is more feasible and likely to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with this project. We certainly, in terms of applying for this TIGER grant, our initial thoughts on that were, we're not ready to do that yet. Although, and we were told by some federal agencies and our consultants that we should go ahead with this process. In today's world, the TIGER grants, usually any grantee goes through 2 or 3 rounds of TIGER before they're funded for a TIGER grant. And we don't expect that will be any different in that regard. We met with the Department of Transportation and the Federal Railway people. We went out early at One Voice, and they certainly didn't give us any reason to believe that we would not be in that scenario. They said you don't look to be ready on this grant, but they said we never discourage people from applying. I think what we will get out of this process is information for the next round that helps us to better understand if there are deficiencies in our application or things that we didn't think about. We will be able to get that information from the second go-around. I have little or no expectation that we will be funded in the 2016 round of Tiger, but I think it's a process we need to go through forward, and that's why it's here tonight. Mr. Peterson, anything to add?
No, between the two of you, you've covered. The only thing that I will add is the expense associated with this engagement of Parsons Brinkerhoff certainly will not be wasted if we don't get a grant award, because much of this information that they're gathering will be available and used in future applications. So it's still money well spent. Obviously, as we go forward, and as the mayor pointed out, we will get some feedback from USDOT about our application, what was good and what was missing. And so that means next year round, and there will be another round of Tiger in 2017, we will be that much further along in our planning process, and we also will have benefit of that feedback from Department of Transportation officials who are reviewing these grants and making decisions, and therefore will submit a much stronger application. But I will also, with that being said, you never know what's going to happen. And I will tell you that our project that we outline meets a lot of the objectives that the Secretary of Transportation has put forth this year as what he considers to be the high priority objectives. And so I'm with the mayor. I would be very surprised if we were funded this year, but it's possible. And so I don't think we should... it's certainly not a waste of time, and it's certainly not a process that has no chance of funding, but probably very low chance. But you never know.
Fair enough. Mr. McBride.
Just another thought, kind of to buttress what everyone here has said, but I do think it's important to temper expectations, particularly since we were successful getting a Tiger grant for the building in which we now sit. It was a much different situation. That was a brand new program at that point in time. Somebody had to be first. I believe this is now round 8. So there are a lot of projects across the country that have been in the queue for a long time. So it's a little different situation as far as we're concerned this time around.
Well, acknowledging that Tiger was new when we got our grant, it was still a 10-year process for us to get funding on that station. So I think we are used to taking the long play position on these projects. Ms. Gaines?
That's what I was going to say is I, of course, was on the council when we started and went through all that process. And it's not an easy process. And, but we were further along then. We were basically, we'd had most of these plans and things. But did we actually get it the very first time, or did it take a second time?
First time on Tiger.
Okay.
First Tiger. And we were more than ready. We were much further along than we are now.
We were also very excited, I do remember. But so we'll keep our fingers crossed, but you're right. Now it's probably even more, it was pretty competitive then. But we're probably even more so now, and so we can learn from it. That's the best deal, is getting the feedback.
Mr. McCarthy, and then Ms. Lawrence.
I just want to add on a little bit in response to some of the questions I've been getting about under, over, Amtrak, not Amtrak, temporary, not temporary. Excuse me, is the question I've been getting most, why are we even considering trying to get across the tracks? And really 2 reasons. One is to satisfy the railroad's demand that we provide service on the south side, and the Uptown 2.0. I think that's, there's been a lot of attention to it, but some people seem to still be missing that portion in the media, that we're trying to develop the south part of Uptown. And that to be successful, we believe that there needs to be an easy way for people to get across so that we can develop both sides, and that there'll be this flow back and forth library, wherever that lands, some light retail and housing, up to more commercial development on the north side, and a free flow. And that we'd prefer to do that in one action rather than two, rather than satisfy the railroad and the Amtrak and then satisfy our development needs for continued growth and success in Uptown. We'd rather do that in one action, hopefully an underpass if that works out with the feasibility and some federal grant help, if not an overpass that also allows bicycles and walkers and everybody else, not just Amtrak passengers. So that context seems to have been being lost, that kind of large global frame. I just want to talk to respond to some of the questions I've been getting. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenz?
Yeah, and perhaps just along the same line of trying to clarify, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. In the application process that we're basically going to start now, ahead of the feasibility study for reasons that have just been discussed, will the application be for funding of a not yet specified grade separation entity? So it's not going to be for a specific design of
Correct.
under or an over or a 360, whatever we might come up with at some point. So it's a
That's correct.
non-specified design.
Hovercraft. I'm thinking
A
hovercraft.
hovercraft, right. So I think
Yeah,
that's another thing to
A grade separation alternative, we don't know what that will be,
be
but
determined.
yes, to be
Yes,
determined.
and I think that's
right.
important, too, to understand that we're basically starting this in parallels. You know, you kind of sometimes think of projects to happen linearly, and that's not always the case. And so this is a situation where we're having to start some things in parallel. One other question, because it's been talked about the feasibility study, will any of the funding possibly include the part funding of the feasibility study itself? I mean, that may not be in time, but could be paid back.
It could.
Could.
It could.
Okay.
Typically not. Typically, they require, the design work, particularly the preliminary feasibility work, to be done in advance and done separately, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could actually award that money as well.
Okay.
Certainly, we'll ask for that.
Okay. Doesn't hurt
But,
to ask.
and that would assume we'd be funded now, because if we're not funded, we will then proceed with the Phase 1 feasibility, and we will be a lot more further along next time in a better position, having had that work done.
Okay.
And then once we've spent that, we cannot go back and recoup that expense. But as long as the outlay hasn't occurred, we can certainly ask for it, and they can fund it,
Okay.
although it's probably not likely.
Okay, fair enough. All right, good, thank you.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item K is a resolution waiving the formal bidding process and authorizing an agreement with CHG and Associates for professional assistance to secure federal funding for Uptown 2.0 and the Uptown Normal Rail Grade Separation Project, and authorizing an associated budget adjustment. Mr. Fritzen?
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Fritzen?
I think, again, maybe some discussion on the necessity of this would be in order. It makes sense, I think, to waive the formal bidding process and go with somebody who knows us well, and CHG and Anya in particular know us well and have worked with not just Normal, but the One Voice and setting things up for us out there in Washington, D.C. So she understands the area, not just the town. I guess for this one, it strikes me as this is just kind of a necessity to do business with Washington, D.C. And so this money it's not as directed towards a more technical nature of the previous question. This is a little fuzzier. And so if you could help explain where you arrive at a dollar amount, or how they might have arrived at this dollar amount, for the services they're going to provide, the types of services, and then that's a good place to start, and then we'll go from there, I guess.
I'm going to just make one comment and turn it over to Mark for further explanation on that. But the other, I think, very strong reason we want CHG and Associates is because their main body of work, their arena is transportation. That's a lion's share of the work that they do. They do some dabble in other areas, but they're primarily a transportation consulting group, and have been that way for many, many years. So they understand and keep very close track of what's happening in that arena in terms of laws and funding and things like that. And plus, over the years, they have a relationship with the people in DOT, and that's important. Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, just a couple things. First of all, just to differentiate the two, and you did essentially that, but just to add to that, the Parsons Group is a very technical, their services are very technical. They are transportation consultants, and they can help us with the intricacies and the technical aspects of the application, and it is very complex and technical, and that's their area of expertise. CHG is more focused on process, and boots on the ground in Washington, D.C. is absolutely essential. Taking nothing away from the wonderful work that our delegation there, our representatives and senators and their staff do for us, but frankly, they also lack the expertise and the time to take our project by the hand and walk it through the process. So it is critically important that we have somebody there in Washington, D.C. that is constantly monitoring the process, knows when letters need to be sent, when phone calls need to be made, and also is aware all the time of new funding opportunities that may occur. And they do occur throughout the year. An opportunity will become available, and they're plugged into that. The actual dollar amount is a negotiated amount. First of all, there are general industry standards. I will tell you, CHG is, by lobbying standards, a very small company. And they are less expensive because they're small. Their overhead is low. Anya Graves is the principal. She has 2 employees. But it's basically her firm, and she does a lion's share of the work. There are many law firms, many lobby firms out there that are massive. They have hundreds and hundreds of employees and many attorneys and so forth, and they're not to take anything away from those firms, but they are more expensive. So what we negotiated with Anya Graves is a fairly modest engagement, but we found, based upon past experience, it's money well spent. She's very responsive. And again, I dare say without her work, we would not be sitting in this building that we're in today. She was essential to getting, and there were a lot of people involved, and certainly we did a lot of work ourselves, but she was essential to our ability to get that first Tiger grant. She's really talented, and I'm amazed at her contacts. I think RC pointed out she knows just about every building when she would know people, and it was able through her contacts to get, I think, our One Voice group connected with decision makers in various agencies, not just transportation, but mental health and STEM education as well. But certainly her wheelhouse is transportation. So the dollar amount that we're talking about was a negotiated amount, and the amount of time she spends on our project will ebb and flow throughout the year. There may be 30-day periods where it's a matter of a few phone calls, some letters, touching base with Wayne and myself and the mayor. There are other months where she is working on this thing around the clock. So it ebbs and flows, but I'll guarantee we get our money's worth out of her. So but as far as a lobby engagement, that is a very modest sum.
That reminded me of another question I had to really ask to refresh my memory, because we've spent money this way in the past. Mm-hmm. Has it been on a similar contractual engagement, or did we at one time have kind of an ongoing investment in lobbying services in Washington, D.C.?
It was focused primarily on transport. With CHG, we engaged CHG for a period of five years, probably over a 5-year period, and it was a flat monthly rate, and we get updates all the time, maybe too often. I'm always getting another update, and here's what's happening in Washington, D.C. And also, they do look out for other grant opportunities. So they will not just be working on the grade separation. They will look at other opportunities for funding. You know, we've talked about reconfiguring some of the streets around Uptown as part of Uptown 2.0, doing some road diets, some pedestrian improvements. She will also be working on some of those things as well. But yeah, we have engaged her, and these typically are longer-term engagements. This may, go on for, depending on the length of this process, 2 or 3 years until we reach a point where we feel we don't need her daily involvement. And that was the case. I think it's been 4 or 5 years that we have not had any formal engagement with CHG, and now we're hopefully starting again.
Okay, thank you.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fredson?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz? Aye. Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. That concludes our omnibus agenda this evening. We have 3 items of general orders. The first is a resolution approving an intergovernmental revenue sharing agreement between the County of McLean, the City of Bloomington, and the Town of Normal. And this, of course, has to do with the mental health dollars that we are spending. Motion for approval?
Approval.
Approval.
Thank you. And I would acknowledge that County Board Chairman John McIntyre, County Administrator Bill Wasson, and Don Knapp are here if you have questions for them about any of this process. Mr. McCarthy, we'll start with you.
Thanks. No question, really. I just, I think, mentioned this when we first started considering doing this as part of our sales tax discussion, but particularly when we're in a political cycle and the focus isn't always positive about what's happening around, I think this is something that we should pat ourselves on the back as a community coming together, 2 separate municipalities and a county government coming together to really begin to address a need after at least a couple of years of hard work by administrative staff and board back that's visiting us tonight. The 2 bodies came together independently to decide to get behind this as a community. I think is something that we should really be proud of, without really a lot of effort, negotiating with each other, that we were able to do this. So thanks for all your hard work, and glad that we're getting it done.
Absolutely. Further on the item? Ms. Gaines?
Well, I was just going to say, obviously, this is terrific. I've been harping on this for years, so I'm really glad this is coming through. We went through the whole process in coming up with an action plan. But my one concern is that I hope that we make certain doesn't happen is that money is just not used for just judicial things and the jail. That the community has a lot of needs. There's, there's transitional housing and permanent supportive housing that is needed. There's lots of other services because our state is just, not helping out a whole lot with all of this, and things just keep getting cut and cut. And so, I think there's gonna be a committee that's gonna kind of keep watch over this, and with that, I also hope that it will really be memorializing all of, every year what's happening and are we staying on track and what gets done and how it needs to be done and who are the contacts, because the faces change, the names change, and then things get lost. So I guess I'm wondering, my bottom line question is, will the town and the county at times be able to have some conversations back and forth so that we're all thinking we're on the same page, so that there's just not, we're giving the money and then in Normal we're feeling like, well, geez, I'm not sure what we're getting for this. So I guess I'd like to make certain that we have some capacity to also stay on track and keep things.
Fabulous point. I think a couple things in this agreement address that. Number one, there will be someone from this body that will serve on the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council, which is the main body that's going to be recommending uses of these funds to the county board, and the county board will ultimately make those decisions, but I suspect they will, generally follow the recommendations of the committee, which will be, I understand, 15 to 20 people, many of them professionals in the community, very familiar with some of the issues. So I think that's number one, and so whoever that ultimately is from this body will have that opportunity to report back to the rest of you what's going on and how those decisions are made. Also, within this agreement, I think it's Section 3.4, the county is obligated to report to the town annually exactly how those dollars are being used. So you will be able to see exactly where and how those dollars are being used to address needs within the community. And the needs will be, I think the focus is going to be on the Behavioral Health Action Plan that was created last year by the county, and that's where they're going to focus the attention. But and we have a great working relationship with the county. I'm sure at any time if you as an elected official or the body has concerns, they'll be happy to sit down and discuss those with us. And so I think there's enough safeguards built into the agreement to address your concerns.
Great.
I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. McBride?
Sometimes perspective is good, and a great way to get perspective can be to leave the community. And as Mr. Peterson mentioned earlier, I did have the opportunity to accompany him and the mayor and Wayne Aldridge on One Voice. And, the uniqueness of what we're doing here as a community was noted. I mean, it really is unusual for municipalities and a county to step up into an area that frankly has traditionally been the purview of state government and federal government. But as we all know, the last several decades that has not happened, and it's only gotten worse. And that presents us with a couple of options: throw up your hands and say that, what's to be done about this, or to attempt to do something. And we as a community got together and are attempting to do something, and I think we should feel very, very good about that.
Further on the item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritson?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 7 is a resolution authorizing the execution of a collective bargaining agreement with the Police Benevolent and Protection Association, PBAA Unit 22. Motion for approval.
Second.
Is there discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Nice job.
Mr. Fritson?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 8 is an ordinance adopting the operating and capital investment budget for the town of Normal for fiscal year 2016-2017. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there discussion on this item?
As usual, everybody on staff did a great job, and I really appreciate how easy they make it for us.
Yes. It's gotten to be a finely honed process. Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritson?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The budget is approved. That concludes our business tonight. Before taking a motion for adjournment, are there comments or concerns? Ms. Gaines?
I think I sent something out to all of you that on Thursday at the Museum of History in downtown Bloomington, the museum and Illinois Wesleyan and Collaborative Solutions, where I work, sponsor a lecture series, and this Thursday will be someone speaking on the subject of the amount of economic impact our arts in this community have. And so I think it's really going to be very interesting, because I think we don't often think about that. And everybody's invited. You can bring your lunch. It's usually about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, so it's from noon to 1, essentially a little after and a little before. So just wanted to let people know that we'd love to have you come out.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenz?
Just want to draw attention to the 2015 annual report that was in my packet, and a link sent to me earlier. Started to look through it, and again, I want to just thank the staff for putting this together. As you know, I'm sort of a detailed person, so I will read this and refer to it, and I appreciate it as a reference document.
Thank you. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
There's a lot of info in there. I sleep on it. I hope for just osmosis.
Everything that, let's see, Mark Peterson knows right here.
Yeah.